Have I made it? Have I arrived on the internet? Here I am. You've done it, folks. Good to see you again. Back for more AGHORA. AGHORA 3, The Law of Karma by Robert Svoboda. Read by your friend Yakov. I'm trying some new stuff with my audio. Let me know how it's coming through. I was tired of the constant white noise. I don't know what happened. I think it's my cat chewing things. Who can say? Nobody's sure. It's good to be here with you again. What the hell is wrong with YouTube these days? Why don't I see comments, you know? I don't see, I don't see the chat. I don't see nothing. Nothing good. There we go. We out here. Give me a whoop whoop if you're watching, if you're listening. I do adore you. Before I get started, I want to talk about there was this cult, air quotes, maybe not air quotes. Hey, I've been following these guys for a long time. When I first got into conspiracy stuff on the internet, one of my first views, the first thing I really got into was the series called The Antichrist Dajjal Will Be a Reptilian Shapeshifter. Let you digest that one for a second, brother. So there was a 500 episode series back when you could only have like 10-minute YouTube videos, 15-minute YouTube videos, and it went over every wacky thing you can imagine. Half the stuff I'm talking about in this book, it was in these videos, only more schizophrenically. Now, the guy who made those videos, Abdullah Hashem, he's gone on to kind of start his own thing. He went to the Middle East after he like got done with these videos, and he supposedly met the Mehdi from Islamic eschatology. And I don't know, this is the part where it gets all wonky, dude, because the guy he was talking to may or may not have died fighting in Iraq. Soldiers of Heaven, I think, was supposedly the group he was with when he died. At that point, it is claimed that another group started like pretending to be this guy online, like took control of all his accounts and impersonating him. And at that point, there was a falling out between Abdullah Hashem's group and this group that may or may not actually be the guy he was talking to. But at this point, Abdullah Hashem has taken the name Abba Sadiq, and he is the head of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. The Ahmadi religion of peace and light. You can search him on all the social media. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Recently, there were members of this religion who were leaving all these other countries that didn't want them. Iran, Iraq, Thailand, apparently, Algeria. There were many nations involved, and they were trying to cross the Turkish border. And basically, Turkey just beat the crap out of them. The Turkish border police just beat them senseless. And it's become a minor international incident with like Amnesty International involved and stuff like that. Well, at this point, Abba Sadiq, the head of the whole thing, he says if they get deported, that they will have no choice left but to die. They will become martyrs. And he says that if they're deported, they will self-immolate. They will set themselves on fire. So, you know, can't stop these things. Sign of the times, baby. Sign of the times. But there's a New Testament, apparently. A new gospel, if you will, written by Abba Sadiq, who is calling himself the Riser of Muhammad, the Savior of mankind, one of the 12 Mehdis. And I want to read that. Now, I'm realizing how long this book is. It's very long. We're 5 episodes in, and I'm only on, what, chapter 2? Chapter 2. This is a very long book, this AGHORA 3, Law of Karma. So, if anyone's interested in hearing about the book, The Goal of the Wise, by Abba Sadiq, the savior of mankind, apparently. Let me know. It's full of aliens and, you know, reptoids. Other things, too. It's based on Shia Islam, essentially. Offshoot. It's an offshoot. But I would like to check that sometime if you guys are interested. You know how it be. So with that, let's kind of get into this, baby. Chapter 2. Elon. I'm going to say Elon. E-L-A-N. I don't want to say Elon over and over again. It feels like I'm summoning some sort of Twitter demon. I met Vimalananda first in September 1975, on the day that Elon, one of his most reliable mares, won her first race for him. I first accompanied him to the races on the day of Stoney's last outing. Horse racing began in Bombay in the early decades of the 19th century when a race ground emerged in what is now the predominantly Christian district of Byculla. When the time came to search for greener pastures, the Royal Western India Turf Club Limited, RWITC for short, selected a low-lying site near Bombay's famous temple of Mahalakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity. Most members of the Indian racing public mistakenly assume that the Mahalakshmi racecourse, which is among the world's most beautiful wagering venues, was a British production. In truth, it was an Indian, Sir Khusro N. Wadia, the Parsi, who was then head of the textile giant Bombay Dyeing, who oversaw the entire project, from concept through planning to construction. He gave the club an interest-free loan of 4 million rupees, baby. 10 million or more in today's dollars, and went himself to Melbourne, Australia to obtain a blueprint. Thanks to his far-sightedness, there is only one turn for all races, up to and including 1,600 meters, 1 mile. After racing ceases in Bombay in April, when the heat makes the course too hard for horses to safely run upon it, the horses which do not proceed to Hyderabad, Bangalore, or some other venue for monsoon racing are moved to the RWITC's facility in Pune. There they relax during the summer and the first part of the rainy season while torrents inundate the Bombay stables. The course to Pune sits atop land which is rented from the southern command of the Indian Army. It is a little jewel box that occupies the southeast corner of the hundreds of acres of military installations that is collectively known as the Pune Cantonment? I don't know, dude. At the end of the Pune season, which usually lasts less than 3 months, the horses are again loaded aboard their vans or aboard a special train and returned to Bombay, where racing commences in late November or early December, after the mud in the stables has thoroughly dried. Racegoers have a choice of 3 enclosures inside that eminently tangible allegory for life that is the Bombay racecourse. Inside the members' enclosure sit the nobility of the racing world, horse trainers, horse owners, stewards, and members of the club and their guests. Club membership is an exceptionally exclusive privilege, which postulants achieve only after dangling for a decade or more on the waiting list. Many club members are also owners. Most of those who weren't were, at least at the time, Novo rich industrialists, old-moneyed erstwhile Maharajas, Nawabs, and other upper-crust cavaliers and their wives. These grandees graced races mainly to see and be seen, as they reclined in comfortable chairs, sipping and nibbling hazardly trivial sums on their whims, or on favorites whose names were bruited about by those in the know. Each year, one or more of these dignified personages would be fatally bitten by the gambling bug and embark upon the road to ruin. Sometimes I would turn my field glasses on the latest reputedly doomed victim and watch him saunter on the grass below the winning post as he sank deeper into economic quicksand with each step of his gallant promenade. The second enclosure is reserved for commoners, those petty tradespeople, underpaid clerks, and unemployed slackers who bet only a few rupees, but study the racing form with the concentration and scream with the delight or anguish of those who bet thousands. These people, who lack all the access to the insider information that is crucial for placing sensible wagers, mostly come to the races to lose money agitatedly. They count among their number a smattering of expert, though rarely formally trained, statisticians, pedigree investigators, hunchmeisters, and the like, men and women who occasionally flabbergast both themselves and onlookers with their serendipity. In between the members and the second is the first enclosure, on whose wooden benches Vimalananda and I would sit when we came to watch the races. True to its central location, it's the home of mostly middle-class bettors, who may have some peripheral connections to people at the track, and so are often able to stake their money on good things. If only good things could be guaranteed to win. Though he was an owner, Vimalananda hated the incestuously cloying atmosphere of the members and preferred to breathe the free air of the first enclosure. His friends there, who were mostly Parsis, included Kama, an upper echelon civil servant, and Firoz Godrej, the bluff, broad-shouldered transport manager of a local soft drink bottling firm, who was usually squired to the track by his milder son, Noshir. A week after the Stone Ice debacle, I again accompanied Vimalananda to the Bombay races in his 1967 Austin-Cambridge station wagon, which we protected by promising a few rupees to one of the young boys who loitered in the parking lot posing as attendants. At the entrance, we were accosted by the usual gang of avid sellers of race cards. Coal is the most popular brand. Desperate tipsters, the most enduring of whom is a devalued coin who styles himself Professor Joker, the Guru. And despairing gamblers seeking inside information. Just past the entrance stands the ring, the oval enclosure composed of the stalls of the bookmakers licensed by the club. Around the ring stand the hardened gamblers, the men and women with eyes of coagulated greed who ignore everything except the odds that the bookies chalk onto their narrow blackboards. When the odds become unexpectedly favorable at one stall, these maniacs elbow and shove their way there en masse to scream out their wagers. Vimalananda, the ex-wrestler, could easily hold his own with the most raptorial of these gamesters when he entered the ring, but my height gave me a signal advantage when it came to thrusting money into a bookie's hand, since I could also by then run up and down stairs more fleetly than he. I was often given the task of betting his favorites for him. Bettors who lack the money or the nerve to wager with the bookies in the ring utilize the tote or totalizer, which is run by the club. The minimum tote risk is 5 rupees, then about 70 cents. Between the ring and the tote swirl the flotsam and jetsam of racecourse society, propelled on waves of avarice towards their rendezvous with an equine-mediated destiny. On that afternoon, it was a world still unknown enough to me to be fascinating. Here huddled a group of astrology buffs debating the latest predictive theory. There leaned a man bent on seducing his pretty companion with the promise of a winner at long odds. Before me, the clerks in the office sat calculating stipends and logging payments. Behind me, the racing populace conferred enigmatically in hurried tones. I navigated this corridor with all the care that one would accord a piranha-filled river. Got Thelonious Punk in the chat. Good to have you. Once again, donation links above me and below me, baby. Hook it up. I'm dying out here. Having a hard time. Help a brother out. Vimalananda's friends in the stands were invariably happy to see him trudge up the stairs to his usual seat, for he always tried to give them at least one good horse to bet on during a long afternoon of racing. From where we sat, we could see to on our right in the east the chimneys of a few of the more than 100 textile mills that are strewn about Bombay. To our north, we viewed the planetarium, and to our left sat the naked horizon that betokened the sea beneath it. Camel was already in his place that afternoon, and Firaz and Noshir soon joined us, but Vimalananda's mind seemed to be too preoccupied to participate in the enthusiasms. When he announced that he had come only to watch these runners and not to bet on them, the others quickly retreated to the business of their calculations. Vimalananda then looked at me with the eyebrow equivalent of a wink, and as I looked into his racebook, I watched him mark with his thumbnail 1 horse in each of the races. This was the first time I saw a procedure which I and others would see now and again thereafter, with the same results. Each horse that he marked thus would always win, and never would he bet on those races. Eventually, it became old hat, but on this first occasion, I was frankly astonished that he could pick 8 winners in a row and neither bet himself or let his friends bet on the secret. I was also shocked that though Elin, how am I saying this? Elin. I was also shocked that though Elin was running, she was not a good thing. You told me, I protested, that you always race your animals to win. And I do, he replied, provided that they are in fact on the job. When they are on the job, everyone knows that they are on the job, so that they can all bet and enjoy along with me. It is always best to share your profits with good people. When you spread the karma around by making others your partners in karma, your own burden gets significantly reduced. But only the greatest horses can win every race they run in. And while I love Elin, she is not unbeatable. I could have just galloped her to make her fit, but this run will act as a gallop. Besides, I will be paid for it. I get a subsidy from the club each time one of my horses runs. Also, by running and losing, she will go down in handicap, which will make it easier for her to win the next time. When she is on the job, everyone will know it. Have no fear. We continued to chat about racing until, after the 4th or 5th race, he began to comment conspiratorially from an astrological standpoint on the day's large number of unlucky-looking attendees. Jyotish regards such characteristics as oddly shaped bodies and uneven teeth as indications of affliction by malefic planets, which impede the free flow of prana, the life force. When such unusual individuals appear at critical moments in one's life, they often foretoken negative events. And at first I thought that he had refrained from betting that afternoon, from fear of some temporary obstruction to his own luck. But he picked up on my thought and contradicted it. Luck is nothing but a matter of karmas, and there's nothing wrong with my luck, not today at least. Today, I am in a different mood. Only a handful of people have ever entered the racecourse and left it again in one piece with their money, character, and balance of mind intact. I was an inveterate gambler, uncontrollable, until my junior guru Maharaj brought me under control. My gurus cured me of the gambling disease. I gamble now, but I control it. It doesn't control me. Still, gambling is a serious karma. It permanently devastates your mind. In fact, they say that it is one of the 3 things that cannot ordinarily be atoned for in this lifetime. What are the other 2? Rape and guru murder. Gambling is that serious? It is very serious. But I have learned how to karmically atone for my gambling, so I'm not worried about that karma. What I am worried about is misusing my other talents. I am always happy to bet on my own fancies, on the horses that I've selected as winners on the basis of their pedigrees, records, handicaps, and recent track work. But suppose that some ethereal being comes to me and says, "Why do all that work? Here are the winners for today's races. Go out and enjoy yourself." I could take his advice and make lots of money that way, but what about the karma? What about the gambling karma, the karma of taking money that I didn't deserve, and most of all, the karma of going under the obligation of that ethereal being? Somewhere along the line, he will want me to do something for him, something I may not want to do. How will I be able to refuse him if I am in his debt? I used to make money on racing with the help of information from the ethereal world, just to test it. And then I would promptly dispose of my winnings. Sometimes I would pay off my debts or other people's debts with that money. For the longest time, I would go down to Crawford Market whenever I had a good day at the races and buy up all the pigeons and doves and other birds waiting there to be slaughtered. Then I would free them, just to watch them fly away and enjoy their freedom. Eventually, though, my mentors made me see what I was getting myself into. Now I just like to sit and watch and appreciate the cleverness of my ethereal friends. Besides, if I take everything that I am due from these horses too soon, that will be all I'm able to get from them. Then there will be no fun in coming to the races. If I had no promissory notes to cash in, I wouldn't be able to do anything but lose. When I owned my dairy in Borivali in North Bombay, all the other owners used to complain that while their buffaloes would go dry within 9 months of calving, mine were still producing even after 14 or 15 months. I told them it's simple. You add water to your milk to increase your profit. But I never add water. Each buffalo and calf has an individual Renanu Bandhana with me, a debt of a specific size that will repay me a specific sum of money. I am content to receive repayment at the rate which nature feels is appropriate for me. You want your money faster, but because you cannot get more from your buffaloes than they owe you, your buffaloes have to go dry sooner. They go dry, in fact, as soon as they pay you back what they owe you according to their Renanu Bandhanas with you. So the only buffaloes that would enter your stable would be those that owe you money? How else would they be able to come to me? He interrupted his train of thought so that we could watch the next winner flash past in our stands. Then some railbirds hailed us into their dispute over likely Derby winners. It was only after the races had ended for that day that he again took up the threads of his argument as we began to drive home. The sun was just then setting tumescently? The sun was just then setting tumescently, baby, behind the tomb of Haji Ali, like a well-cooked samosa dunked by the creator into a deep dish of cerulean chutney. Haji Ali was a pious Muslim who gained his title Haji after performing Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, that all pious Muslims are expected to perform once in their lives. After his return to India, he came to be regarded as something of a saint, and his sepulchre as something of a shrine after his death. Accessible only at low tide, his mausoleum is frequented mainly by Muslims seeking the Haji's ethereal assistance in mundane matters, including the divination of likely winners. As we veered past Haji Ali's last resting place, which just juts out into the Arabian Sea on a small spit of land very near the track's main gate, my mind skidded toward food. I was thankful after a hard day that at the races to find Vimalananda driving us to our favorite Pani Puri stand near the temple at Babulnath. We arrived there just in time to watch the last golden rays of the vanished sun settle to the ground between the faded pastels of the apartment buildings that loomed above us. Pani Puri, known in North India as Golguppa, consists of silver dollar-sized medallions of wheat dough deep fried to make them swell into hollow balls, puri. The stall holder breaks open the ball with his thumb, scoops a few cooked bean sprouts or chickpeas into the cavity thus formed, adds a chutney or two, and then fills the ball with at least 2 types of thin sauces, pani. One spicy with chilies and the other sweet and sour, preferably from tamarind and dates. The customer now alertly stuffs the balls into his mouth. When he bites it, all the flavors rush together and riot in his tongue. Win or lose, we usually stopped for pani puri at the end of a race day. As we munched, Vimalananda waxed oratorical. How many are the ways to make money, and how few of them are free from karma? And the karmas are often very hard to recognize. I have had to work and I have had to make money. I had a rock quarry for a while. I was in the textile business. I owned a dairy. I have had practical experience for the many unsuspected repercussions of the karmas you incur when you earn money. I have always believed in treating Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, as a mistress, not a wife. I tell her, come to me if you want to, but I am married to Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and I don't want a charge of bigamy to be laid against me. That way, I do not tie myself down to her. I do feel like all of this is talking directly to me right now. I don't want that to go unnoticed. Please send me money. Look, I can't fight karma. You can't fight karma. If you're meant to send me money, you send me money. Also, let me know how the audio is, yo. I'm trying something new, so there's not just a bunch of white noise happening in your face. Now, I'll say this right now also. And this will be the last mention of money till the end, but this is an important point. If you want me to do this every day, if I got $20 every time I did this, I would do this every day. Flat out. If I had, and just for transparency's sake, if I had to tell you how much money I've made from doing this, basically nothing. I can't think of a single donation I've even gotten one of these streams. Can't even think of one. It's possible I have, and I don't want to totally discount that, but my point is, I don't think I've made $20 from all of these readings. If I made $20 every time I read, I would do one every day. So if you like this, I want to make that very clear. But even with this attitude, my bad attitude, dude, even with this attitude, it is very hard to earn a living without creating a big bunch of karmas in the process. To begin with, certain things like knowledge, food, and women were traditionally forbidden for commercialization. These three were never supposed to become objects of commerce because they embody the mother: knowledge, food, and women. And how can you even conceive of selling your mother? But people today don't seem to be concerned about this. They do a roaring business in all three and reap horrendous karmas as a result. We paid and saluted the vendor. As Vimalananda sped onto Marine Drive, heading home, I asked him, "Weren't you selling food when you sold the milk from your dairy?" Indeed I was, and that is my point. I know of what I speak, because I have been through the grind. I have had practical experience of the truth of this principle. But this is only one of the many things for you to consider. Even among the things which are permitted for sale, there are variations in the karma involved. For example, to make money from the sale of live animals is better than to earn money from the sale of the corpses of dead animals. But it is still not a good thing. Suppose you own a pet store and you sell an animal to an owner who mistreats his pet. You will be to blame for that abuse. Or who will be to blame for that abuse? You will. And that pet will curse you for it day after day. Dealing in grains and vegetables is better than dealing in meat. Plants will still curse you, and when you kill them, but a plant's curse is less severe than an animal's curse, because plants have less awareness than animals do. Selling live plants is better than selling pieces of dead plants. But what if you sell a tree to someone who mistreats it, or who hangs himself from it? Even when you plant a tree, some of the karma will come to you if that tree is somehow mistreated. Or if someone chops it down and builds a gallows from it. Exactly. Selling fruit is better than selling live plants. And dealing in milk is better even than selling fruit, assuming that the calf drinks its fill first, because there is no killing at all. But you can get yourself into trouble selling milk also, especially if you or your hired hands ill-treat your animals, or if you sell your old dried-up animals to the slaughterhouse, or if you breed the animals and then separate the calf or the kid from its mother. And that also goes for breeding pets for sale and separating pet mothers from their children. Do you think that animal mothers have no feelings? They do, and they and their children can curse you. But as bad as they are, these karmas pale before the karmas incurred by the people who sacrifice the millions of animals that are used every year to test and improve medicines and cosmetics. Our ancient rishis used to test their medicines on themselves. They never asked animals to do their work for them. And their medical system, Ayurveda, has been used safely for thousands of years on millions of patients without requiring any kind of animal experimentation. But in the modern world, millions of animals are butchered annually without any thanks for laying down their lives in the service of science. Alexander Fleming was knighted for discovering penicillin, and many other scientists have received Nobel Prizes. But has a laboratory monkey, or dog, or cat, rabbit, or rat ever received a medal, or had a statue erected in its memory? No, never. Millions of animals are sacrificed each year so that humans can enjoy safe drugs. But what happens to all the violence that is used to perfect the medicines? The law of karma tells us that it will not just evaporate. It has to appear somewhere. One day I got the idea that each of these preparations must contain a fraction of the torture that was inflicted on those animals. Some of that hate and pain must be there, and it comes out in the form of terrible side effects that many of these drugs produce. I don't think anyone else has ever thought this way, do you? I doubt it. I doubt it. I doubt it. We got Rome in the chat. Good to have you. A lot of people told me. They doubted me. Maybe not told me. They doubted that I could grow this channel at all. I think I have within the past few months, whether it's by stupid YouTube shorts or whether it's just getting lucky and having Robert Svoboda talk about his book on social media. I think a lot of people have found me that way. But the important part is that a lot of these names I'm seeing in chat are new, and I appreciate all of you. I would like to emphasize that the traditional greeting of my people is whoop whoop. If you're out there, give me a whoop whoop in that chat. And what about modern agriculture? Today we try to prevent the insects, birds, and other pests from eating their fair share of the crops. Why should we give them a share? Because then they would also have a share in the karma of digging into Mother Earth's body with plows to produce the food. Jains are forbidden from farming or even selling milk for this very reason. This prohibition has made many Jains into moneylenders, which is even worse. Instead of sucking life from the earth, and a moneylender sucks the prana out of those who borrow from him. Besides, think for a moment about what it means to lend money at interest. Money is the embodiment of Lakshmi Shakti. If you regard all Shaktis as mother, could you ever dream of taking your mother to someone else's house and making her work there? And on top of that, demanding her earnings from her at the end of the day? I hope not. Jesus said, "The love of money is the root of all evil," and he was right. But he should also have gone on to say that money itself is a very filthy thing. It is Lakshmi, but Lakshmi in her whore form, the form in which she is passed from person to person and used over and over again. Think of all the karmas that pile up on just one piece of money. Do you know what happened to Croesus, the king who invented money? He died by having molten gold poured down his throat. That should give you an idea of the magnitude of the curse he has unleashed upon us. The rishis never used money, and I personally never keep any on my person unless I simply cannot avoid it. I hate to handle it, which is why I always prefer to give it to you or to Roshni to handle. Oh, great. Roshni was Vimalananda's foster daughter. She and I respected each other sufficiently that we were willing to work together for Vimalananda's benefit, despite what was, at the time, an ongoing foster-sibling rivalry. What are you worried about? It is my job to see that this curse doesn't affect you. If I ask you to dig into the slush for me, then I have to arrange for you to bathe as well. But not everyone has this advantage. Those who don't are affected by these curses. He swung the car onto our street and parked it. Upstairs, Roshni served us drinks. Do you know the story of gold? Gold itself once told me this story. I was resting peacefully in the womb of my Mother Earth when men came and dug into her and dragged me from my home. Then they tortured me by burning and melting me and forming me into new shapes. But I have altered their minds so that they do not keep me outside working for them. Instead, they keep me hidden in dark, cool vaults. Much like my mother's womb, I have cursed them for tormenting me, and now they torment each other over possessing me. Every substance which is stolen from the earth has its own tale to tell. Iron, which is also mined, becomes weapons when men hold it, just as the earth's skin is punctured in strip mines for iron ore. Iron and steel are used to puncture men's skin in the form of bayonets and shrapnel, razors and knives, needles and scalpels. Likewise, coal has its tale to tell, and oil. Oil is the earth's blood. By pumping oil from the earth, we are sucking her blood. Doesn't she have a right to suck our blood in return? And she does. Via modern medical science, every syringe that draws blood from a human is helping to pay back this debt. Particularly if they are plastic syringes. Plastic is made from oil. How can human beings be so blind as to fail to offer the greatest respect and love from Ma, for our Mother Earth? We spill urine, feces, and toxic wastes onto her. We walk on her and spit on her, but she never objects. We tear her skin and extract treasures like gold, silver, and precious stones from her, and she gives them freely. Even though we pump her own life's blood up from the depths of her body, she still supports us, and when we die, she welcomes us into her lap. Only Ma has such magnanimity. But even she cannot save us from the law of karma, because she looks on all her children, every mineral, plant, and animal, with an equal eye. What we do to her children, we have to pay for. I've probably said this before. I once, somewhat recently, had a mushroom trip that said exactly that. I was having visions of the earth and starving children and mothers grieving dead children. And it was screaming to me saying, like, the earth is mother. We are all children of the earth. Any crime done to any sentient thing on the earth, which is all things essentially, is a crime against every mother. Any crime against the mother, including the earth, is a crime against all its children. Goraknath says, when you don't ask, you get milk. When you ask, you get water. When you take, you get blood. This is Gorak's rule. He means that if you don't demand things from nature, she will give them to you of her own free will, just as mothers give milk to their babies out of the exuberance of their joy. If you ask, nature will give you just what you asked for. Because you cannot know what is best for you, it is best not to ask. But if you ask for something, you will receive it. Even though water is not so tasty and nutritive as milk, it will help keep you alive, at least for a while. If you grab, you get blood. Theft is always a karma, just as theft of an animal's life in order to enjoy its flesh is a karma. According to the law of karma, the repayment for blood is blood. Blood is also hard to digest and may cause you to get sick if you are not used to drinking it. Milk is a beautiful, sweet drink. Pure water is pleasant, but blood tastes good only to vampires. So never take anything. Always remain in the lap of the mother and let her feed you from the abundance of her milk. Okay, so producing things is out of the question karmically. What about the professions? What about The professions, are they any better? I would never want to make any money from law. That money is tainted with whatever evil karmas your clients has performed to get him into the sorry plight that he has brought him to you. Then those karmas are multiplied by all the lies you will have to tell if you want to win your case. I have a law degree, but I've never practiced law. My father was trained as a lawyer as well, and he too refused to make money from law. On his first day at work, he advised his clients to settle with each other and avoid litigation. His British boss took him aside and said, "Young man, if this is your attitude, you'll never thrive in this profession." My father told him, "I'm sorry, I can't do what you're asking me to do," and he quit. As for medicine, well, it is better than law, because you don't need to lie all the time. But Ramakrishna Paramahamsa himself said that a doctor's money is all blood and pus. When you take money for treating someone, you still share in the patient's karma, and maybe even create some new karmas. You might as well just take on all the patient's karmas and be done with it. That way, he would get well immediately. And whatever you do, you are only helping nature out. What is so heroic in that? If anyone deserves to be paid when a sick person gets well, it is God, because it is God that does everything. Of course, for that matter, what beneficial activity is there in the universe that God does not do? It is true, though, that a doctor who treats people without demanding a fee helps to clean his karmic slate. I have also trained as an Ayurvedic physician, but I have never charged any fee for my services and never will. What about me? Here I am attending this Ayurvedic medical college. Why do you keep worrying about yourself? If I told you to go there, that makes it my karma, my responsibility. If I tell you to practice medicine and you do, then there too am I responsible, provided that you practice to the best of your ability. I'm doing this for you because of my love for you and my Renano Bandhana with you. As for all the other doctors in the world, well, they have their own karmas and Renano Bandhanas, and if they are lucky, they have someone to take responsibility for them. If they don't, that's their problem. Their fate, you mean. Their fate. Now, if they are clever, they can try to alter their fate. They can practice for free, or for donations alone, or, if their economic circumstances force them to charge a fee, they can sincerely offer some of what they earn to God, and God will appropriate some of their karmas. And so will the priest, if the doctor hires a priest to do the worship that offers some of what they earn to God. And so will the priest to some extent. But you don't like priests. The priests that are good men are the ones I like. The ones I don't, unfortunately, form the vast majority of priests. They practice their profession not because they really love God, but only because they want to make money. All of the religions of the world have been ruined by those greedy priests who loot the gullible. But I am certain that even most of those priests would never loot the people the way they do if they really understood the law of karma. It is a terrible karma to sell spiritual teachings. Even though you may hope to escape from most other karmas, you cannot escape the ill effects of collecting money from people as a condition for providing them spiritual advice. I wonder how many of our phony Bhagavans and Swamis are aware of this. Of all the looting that priests do, that surrounding death is undoubtedly the worst. When a person dies, the priests do their rituals and pray the prayers. After collecting plenty of money from the family of the deceased, hold on a second, let me get some water in me, dude. Too much smoke and not enough water, if I'm being honest. After collecting plenty of money from the family of the deceased, they announce that the soul has reached heaven. But how do they know that? Is it so easy to reach heaven? To get to heaven, you pretty much have to die planning to go there. Because it is what you are thinking about when you die which determines where you will go after death. Ante mati sagati. After death, people tend to try to insulate themselves from their new reality. They try to remain wherever it is they find themselves and tell themselves, just as we humans do, that they are very happy right there. People must want to change before change can occur. But no priest today has an inkling of what happens after death. So of what use are their assurances? The only reason they reassure the family is because they want to be well paid and want to be well fed. Unfortunately for them, the food and the money they receive from these rituals is contaminated by the carnal desires of the dead person. Today's priests are not taught how to digest this food and the money, which means that those desires will pollute them by making them more worldly. This in turn will cause them to enjoy themselves lavishly in so many ways. Is this not a sort of heaven? By the time they die, they will have used up all their good karmas, which gives them no alternative but to go to hell and endure the effects of their bad karmas. Is that not terrible? Stealing from God creates similar results. The former trustee of one of our famous Bombay temples was very fond of the horses. He would oversee the counting of the temple's daily collection, and when he needed money for betting, he would loudly abuse whoever was doing the counting. "Hey, you idiot! Count properly!" When he heard this agreed upon signal, the counter would let some coins roll under the furniture. Then when the sweeper came to sweep up, he would also be roundly abused by the trustee, and would sweep up and deliver the money. The sweeper also knew the signal. To rob God is bad enough, but to gamble with God's money is even worse, especially when God is your cook. This trustee lived exclusively on food that the temple was providing him. Given these facts, you will not be surprised at how this fellow died. He was in such a state that he couldn't eat or even drink water. Horrible. But that is the law of karma. Why, the law of karma has not even spared God himself. Look at that temple I regularly visit in the south. Last year, gold, silver, and jewels worth hundreds of thousands of rupees, including one of the enormous emeralds presented to the temple by Krishna Devaraya of the Vijayanagaram Empire, disappeared into the hands of thieves. Everyone was asking, and rightly so, why such an ancient temple, where so much worship has been performed for so many centuries, should have to suffer like this. The Brahmanas, of course, are partly to blame. They always are. But here we should look deeper. Where did Krishna Devaraya get that emerald? He was king, so most likely he stole it from somewhere. Isn't that unrighteous? And where did the temple get so much money? Much of it came from the sorts of people who have pots and pots of money nowadays. Those are the people who have stolen, cheated, lied, and killed to get rich. When these people realize what they have done, they try to purchase deliverance by giving some small fraction of their wealth to some temple. When God tries to eat all this karmically indigestible tainted money, shouldn't he also be given a good purge? Shouldn't he also be taught a lesson? And shouldn't the people who come there and try to be clever also be taught a lesson? Like Bhai Kaka from Bombay, who dropped dead of a heart attack on the toilet of the ashram he had built for his guru near that very temple on the very day of Guru Purnima, when the gurus are to be worshipped. What a message that's sent to all concerned. So poor God has to suffer for his devotees' karma. Yes, but he's happy to do so. That's how much he loves them. And how much work is it for him anyway? But for a human to try to do what God does, well, Namdev, a famous Maharashtrian saint, tried once. He took over from his beloved deity, Lord Vithala, Vishnu, who stands on the brick, for a day, just so he could see what it was like to be worshipped. And what a day he had! He had to stand up straight without even a quiver, so that no one would discover he was there. He had to put up with all the complaints that the worshippers brought to throw at his feet, and he couldn't eat any of the beautiful food that they brought him. Deities eat with their eyes instead of their mouths, but this was beyond Namdev, who had to stay hungry. By the end of the day, he was exhausted and fed up. When Lord Vithala returned to his temple that night, Namdev fell at Vithala's feet and cried, "Enough, Lord, enough, forgive me, take your job back, I can't handle it." It's so easy to bollocks things in this business of money that it's hard to believe anyone ever survives the effects of their errors. Well, I'm very lucky that way, because even when I have made mistakes, someone has been there to correct them for me. Once I was in desperate need of money. I was so desperate that I just didn't know what to do. But I was thinking of doing something drastic. Thinking, I fell into a deep sleep and had a dream. In the dream, someone showed me a man with a big fat belly, the kind of belly so many successful businessmen have. I was told his name and his wealth. He is worth 50 million rupees. Then I saw a second man, who was thin, absolutely, 4 times thinner than any man you have ever seen. I was also told his name, and this man is worth 100 million rupees. Finally, I was shown a man who was absolutely rotten, literally eaten up by disease, full of leprosy and eczema. I heard his name, and he is worth 500 million rupees. Then I was asked, "Now do you want to become wealthy?" I said, "No, please forget it. All I want is for nature to take care of me, and whatever she provides for me, I will accept with great thanks." Since that day, I have forgotten to try to become rich. I don't need to be rich. Someone is taking care of me. Oh, to be taken care of. To have all your needs provided for you, to want nothing, to be spared the gratuitous stimulation. Almost sounds like a prison cell, baby. Almost sounds like that prison cell. The prison cell of the world. You're there whether you like it or not. Someone's telling you when to eat, when to drink, when to sleep. No doubt, whether you know it or not. Sometimes the bars that you can't see are the most insidious bars. Other times they're the only thing holding reality together. And you better thank God. Sometimes we have to lock down, baby. And sometimes only the essential workers are allowed out. If you're working the kitchen, you know, someone's got to sweep the floor of the prison. Sometimes we act certain ways. We have to be miserable. You know, we have to be tormented. We have to need escapes and, you know, things that just make us even worse off. Because if we didn't have these things, how do we justify the prison? Right? If things didn't suck, why would we have to keep going on like this, man? We couldn't even live, right? We just have to cease being. If there were no suffering. Just like the prison industry has been commodified, so too do we do to our own lives, just to remain there in our cell. Prisons don't want to rehab people. I've been watching a lot of prison documentaries lately, if you haven't noticed. When you watch the documentaries from the 60s, it's all about rehab. How do we rehab these people? These people are ultimately good. How do we rehab them? If you watch the documentaries from the 80s, it's like, well, these people are trying to be good, but can we rehab them? And if you watch modern ones, it's like, no, there is no rehabbing these people. Just stomp them harder. But it benefits the prison to be full of drugs, full of gangs, full of crime. After all, that's why they're there. That's how they get paid. And it's the same thing for our society today. If we weren't miserable, how could we keep Going to McDonald's. How can we keep, you know, subscribing to Netflix? You know, if we weren't all completely divisive in our own weird ideological bubble, what would we have? What would we even need the state for? Why would we need police? If we weren't worried about, like, these people over here, they're plotting something, I hate them, they're on the other side. Never finding common ground. Whatever side you're on, you have to hate the other side. And you realize this thing that we're always trying to justify, it doesn't need us at all. It doesn't require our happiness at all. In fact, it's the opposite. And suddenly, some dude in Europe invents a liquid tree. And they're putting these vats with, like, chlorophyll, these dystopian-looking vats into cities, because that's more practical than, like, bulldozing a block and planting a bunch of trees. Somehow. And it is! Because we need this stupid system. Well, understand that this system, this prison we've created, doesn't value you any more than it valued that tree. And while human thought and energy might always be necessary, your happiness is not. In fact, your body is not. And when I see the future, I see a city that still has industry. It still has roads that were built by people because the roads keep things moving. They're very efficient. And what's not efficient is having a bunch of people with a bunch of different thoughts. So what I see is the city's still there, the industry's still there, the roads are still there, and every fucking street is just lined with brains in jars. Now, I don't mean this literal, but this is the sort of thing that we're creating day by day. And this system has no morality. It's not based on any morality. It's based on a skewed vision of efficiency. And now we know efficiency is cost cutting, production speed, you know, like branding and crap like that. We get that. And we all know how this crap can be misused. But what the most efficient thing is to make things so fucked up that a fucked up system is always justified. That's the most efficient thing. And that's what it's all about, and we're building it constantly. And if you don't understand Gnosticism, that's how it works. And if you want to know who the demiurge is, just look in the mirror. And it's when you see that you can change it. Only when you see that clearly, when you look in the mirror and you only see the devil, that you know what's really going on and can do something about it. And that's why they killed Michael Jackson. Understood? The next day I proceeded to Pune to resume my Ayurvedic classes. A couple of weeks passed before I could escape again on a train bound for Bombay and descend through what is some of the loveliest scenery in India, the range of hills known as the Western Ghats. The Deccan Queen arrived at Victoria Terminus that morning precisely at its scheduled time of 10:30 a.m., and once I reached the egress, it took me my usual 7 minutes to walk to Vimalananda's digs. He was awaiting me excitedly. It truly amazes me, he began, that so many people who should know better willfully ignore the terrible karmas that are connected with tainted money, and merrily continue to scuttle themselves just for the sake of a few rupees. You can call unimaginable calamities down on your head when you start to play about with life and death. Only a few days after you last left, a sadhu came to meet me. He told me, "Get me half a pound of meat from a black goat and half a pound from an owl, and I will work miracles." I could see that he was willing to do this just to put me under his obligation, so that I would have to do some other work for him. No thanks. I told him, I know what an owl can do. You needn't think you were telling me anything new, but I am not interested. Please get out of my house. Was he upset? Who cares? I don't even want his thoughts in my neighborhood. Do you remember that I told you that the goddess Lakshmi rides on an owl? Yes. I explained to you then that when you become rich, your discrimination becomes clouded and works well only at night, or when you are otherwise in the dark, literally or figuratively. But that is just one interpretation of this myth. Now I think you should know some more things about owls. Things that very few people know. Suppose you were to apply to your eyes the collyrium that has been prepared from an owl according to the appropriate ritual. You could then meet the richest man in the world and request $1 billion loan, and he would give it to you without even batting an eyelid. What is more, he would follow you around like a puppy dog, become so fond of you that he'd never be able to leave you. Or you can use it on some movie star. You could marry her and never have to fear that she'll go with another man. How can she leave when she is crazy about you? You can also prepare from an owl a thing which can make you invisible, and there's no need for me to tell you how advantageous it can be to be able to become invisible whenever you please. The owl can be an extremely useful bird if you know how to use it. We can call the process by which you use an owl the Uluka Siddhana. Uluka means owl, and Siddhana, as you know, means any kind of spiritual procedure that is designed to achieve some specific result. You can begin the Uluka Siddhana by taking an owl to the smashan, cremation ground, and performing a ritual to call a certain class of spirit to sit in the owl's body. The spirit will start to talk to you through the owl's mouth and will tell you all about each part of the owl's body and how it can be used. Now comes the dangerous part. You must watch the owl closely and listen to it very vigilantly. As soon as it seems he is about to stop talking, you must hit him very hard with a stick or with your fire tongs. If he gets to the end of what he has to say, he will conclude his remarks by saying, "Now you are ruined." Coming from an owl, this is such a tremendous curse that you will be destitute, disease-ridden, and a beggar to the end of your days. But even death will not save you. After you die, you will become one of the most miserable of spirits for uncountable ages. So you have to be alert and ruthless. You repeat the same procedure of calling the spirit into the owl's body several days in a row until you are satisfied that you have collected all the information that you can safely extract. Then, if you want to save yourself, just as the owl is about to stop speaking on the last day, you take a sword or large knife and cut off its head with a single blow. A moment's hesitation for any reason and the spirit will do his best to pervert your mind just long enough for him to get his curse out edgewise. And you are doomed. No one on earth can save you, and even God will not come to your rescue. Even if you do succeed in murdering the owl, your problems have only begun. First, you must see that it is reborn into a higher womb, unless you wanted to slaughter you in some succeeding birth, according to the law of karma. Also, how do you think the goddess Lakshmi, who rides on an owl, will feel about you if you kill her vehicle? I'm sure you can imagine what will happen to your wealth and prosperity, if not immediately, then in the future. If she gets angry with you, never approach these things lightly. And anyways, is it right to torture an owl just for the sake of mundane gains? Never! I did this sadhana once, simply because an ethereal being had told me about it and I was determined to see whether or not it worked. Well, it works. But I have never done it again. I really don't think that anyone should ever do it. I killed an owl when I was out hunting, when I was young. Do you think Lakshmi is still angry with me? Well, even though you did it deliberately, you didn't know any better, so I suspect that nature will eventually let you off the hook in this account. At least it was an owl and not a frog. Killing a frog is such a terrible karma that they say it is equal to killing a human. But I would go further. I would go so far as to say that although you may be able to pay off the karma of killing a human during that same lifetime, you will not be able to pay off in the same lifetime the karma of deliberately killing a frog. When you kill a frog, you will have to be born again to endure being slaughtered by that frog. We got Avocado in the chat. We out and about, dude. Just you and me. That's fine. That's fine. These videos rack up slowly. That's why we do them. Instantly, my blood froze. For though I had never killed a frog, even in a laboratory, I had a few years earlier been involved in a tantric ritual in which a frog was used. Fortunately, it was released alive. I told him about it. Thank God it didn't die. That's all I can say. Besides, the whole project wasn't your idea. The fellow conducting the ritual will have to pay for its karma. Does he realize what he has gotten himself into? But what about the people who kill frogs in laboratories in the name of science, and the people who eat them? Even though ignorance of the law is no defense, the degree of the karma depends a lot on intention. In the context of science, the karma is minimal if you are a student and your instructor directs you to kill a frog. But if you design some sort of research project that involves killing frogs, then you are responsible for those deaths. Eating them makes you responsible too, of course. You know, when I owned my rock quarry over on Sheva Island, I more than once saw my workers break open a rock in which there was a frog. Out it would jump, alive, don't ask me how. And then as the poor thing was trying to hop away, they would grab a hold of it and eat it on the spot. Frogs and rocks. Did they even wonder how the frog had stayed alive in there? Not at all. They were being driven by their karmas. Being illiterate and ignorant, all they could do was conform to the nature of their Runanu bandanas. But what of all the educated people who look at a frog and immediately think, frog legs? How many people ever wonder about the life of frogs? How many people ever look at a little frog and appreciate it for how beautiful it is, just enjoying its life? The frog is the farmer's friend. When it begins to croak in the summer, the farmer knows the rains are about to start. Frogs eat thousands of insects during their lives, so they are a natural form of pest control. And whenever you see a frog, you know there is a snake about, because frogs are the natural food of snakes. Life lives off life. I once accidentally killed a toad when I was but a boy. We had a swimming pool in my backyard, and the fact of the matter is toads, I should say, they would jump in there and they would die all the time in the chlorinated water, unable to get out. So when I saw them in my backyard, I would huck them over the fence. One time I took it and I hucked it over the fence and it smacked into a tree, and I'm pretty sure it went poorly. I didn't mean to do it. And it was a toad, not a frog, but still, I feel very badly about shit like that to this day. I once watched a buddy of mine pick up one of these toads and smack it full force against the concrete ground. I don't know why a person would do things like that. I remember that pretty vividly too. That was terrible. Crap like this is why I gave up meat when I was like 13. I don't think it's an accident. Something else at play here. But instead of being respected, frogs are cruelly tortured. Their legs are chopped off while they are still living and conscious, and the torso is tossed aside to die. And those who exterminate them by the hundreds every day, how many hundreds of times must they have been sliced apart to give them the right to slice in turn? And how many times, and how many thousands of future lives will they be killed by the frogs they are killing now? It is so difficult to know the law of karma. There's a South American ritual where they grab a frog, like a poisonous frog essentially, and they tie him up. And they scrape the stuff on him, his excretions. They scrape the excretions off him. And it's 5-MeO DMT, which when smoked gets you high as balls. Now there's another form of DMT, NN-DMT, which is found in plants. The NN-DMT is supposed to be far more pleasant than the 5-MeO DMT. Now it's not that I've heard too many like negative stories about 5-MeO, but it is always like a darker place, more of a void, whereas the NN is absolutely beautiful. I can't help but think there might be some karma involved with that. We got K in the chat, dude. Ultra Claves, Hermetium, dude. How you doing, brah? For rituals, it's okay. We got Avocado doing a remedy for me. I'm gonna need it, dude. I killed lots of animals. That's a weird thing to just throw out. Let's look at that out of context. Why think of DMT when there is MA? Go on. Okay. I did hear that a frog is used to sweep the ground in the area where a Vedic yajna sacrificial ritual is to be performed, and that there is a Vedic hymn that is used to obtain rain that compares frogs to brahmanas. Even the scientists say that so far frogs are the only animals they can clone. So all told, I suppose frogs must have some unusual shakti. I guarantee you the Catboy cloning lab is somewhere deep underground, dude. The Catboy hunting grounds, they might be above ground. If you're gonna hunt Catboys, would you do it underground or above ground? I think we've cloned all sorts of weird chimeras at this point. We got Catboys, no Frog Boys? They certainly do. For example, you can use frogs to enchant a piece of money. I won't go into the details, but it involves taking a pair of frogs and burying one of them alive. Once the money is enchanted, you mark it, so you will be able to recognize it. Then you go spend it on something. Within a few hours, it will return to your bag. Don't ask me how. You can keep using it and getting it back indefinitely. But what about the cost to you? The price is far too high to pay. Do you still have to pay the price when you sacrifice an animal to a deity? You will unless you know how to escape it. A certain ruler, who was a great devotee of Ma, used to offer a number of animal sacrifices to her daily. After he died, he found himself surrounded by thousands of angry animals and asked Ma what was going on. She told him, "You have taken their lives. Shouldn't they get an opportunity to take your life now? This is the law of karma." This came as a great shock to the ruler, who begged, "But Ma, I sacrificed them only for the love of you." Ma smiled and said, "No! There was some self-interest behind your love and affection for me. The real reason you sacrificed them was to get me to benefit you and your family. And besides, did I ever ask you for these sacrifices? No, I never did. If you were really so interested in sacrificing to me, why couldn't you have cut your own flesh and offered me your own blood? They at least belong to you. If you really loved me, why didn't you give me the thing you were most fond of? Your own life." At least the king realized what he had gotten himself into. "But wait," Ma went on. "My grace is there for you. I am here to look after you. Instead of having to be born and then slaughtered thousands of times, you will only have to do it 10 times. But those 10 times, you will have to experience what these sacrificial beasts have experienced." Sacrifice is very big in Judaism. Is that one of the reasons that the Jews have been suffering for so long? That they have all those dead animals angry with them? That is a part of the problem, obviously. Another part is that when they invaded Canaan, they massacred everyone they could find. I knew from Sunday school that in a number of places in the Old Testament, e.g. Joshua 9:24, Jehovah exhorts the Israelites to ensure that no Canaanite be left alive. The ensuing carnage amounted to genocide of the Canaanites. Was the 20th century Holocaust a part of the karmic reaction to that long ago extermination? Was it? Was that 20th century Holocaust a part of the karmic reaction to that long ago extermination? I thought at first to ask him his opinion, but then kept this thought to myself. As we all do. I don't know. And asked and said, "So Islam, which is big into sacrifice, will not be spared either?" The Muslims are already starting to slaughter each other. Look at Iran and Iraq. Does everyone who performs animal sacrifice end up this way? Almost everyone. You should slaughter an animal only if you know your Renano Bandana makes it necessary for you to do it. You must have that sort of karmic debt with the animal. Then you must properly select the animal you want to slay. The only fit victims are those animals which carry certain signs on their bodies which show they are meant to be sacrificed. If you perform a sacrifice without a fit victim, your karma will be much, much worse. Avocado in the chat says, hello all, give tips to reader, he is struggler. It is very true. I didn't say it, he said it. Okay, says Forg Boys. Forg Boys get hunted in the gladiatorial combat arenas. Catboy hunting is done in national parks. Avocado says, God is Amrita. Ask Thanos. Oh, M.A. Why think of DMT when there is M.A. meaning Ma? Mama. Mama. I am struggling with words, that's for sure. But even if you have a fit victim, you must also have the power to make the dead body live again. When our rishis used to sacrifice animals, they always brought the animal back to life afterwards by means of a special mantra. That way there is no stain of karma at all, as there is when you murder an animal without being able to revive it. For instance, you can sacrifice a chicken, cook it, and offer it to Ma. Then you distribute its flesh and her prasada, blessing, but you must retain at least one small bone. From that bone, you reconstruct the chicken and bring it back to life. It will live again, but it must never again be sacrificed. Instead, you must either set it free or keep it and feed it well. If you cannot or choose not to do this, then you must still bring the animal back to life, but in a different way. Awesome. You do this by ensuring that the animal gets an immediate higher rebirth. This is what I do whenever I eat a piece of meat. If you sacrifice an animal without this power, you are the biggest fool. Ordinary people kill only for the tongue, which is what causes the karma. They kill and eat now and afterwards. They are killed and eaten. Birth after birth. The wise slaughter only to redeem. And this is only for ordinary sacrifices. The karma for human sacrifice is far, far worse. Human sacrifice, Narabali, is the most difficult of all sacrifices. To kill a human being is a terrible karma, but to offer a human soul to Ma offers unbelievable benefits, both for the offerer, and for the soul. It is a good thing to do Narabali, but you can do it safely only if you know exactly what you are doing. For one thing, even though almost everyone today is a pashu, an animal, you can't just go out and slaughter whomever you please like the thugs did. The thugs, deceivers, were a secret society of Indians which offered unsuspecting victims as sacrifices to the goddess Bhavani. During their heyday, they waylaid and murdered an estimated 2 million travelers. Their depredations ended when they were suppressed by General Sleeman and the British Army during the last century. In the wrong hands, these rituals bring nothing but trouble. The reason there are almost no Aghoris left in Girnar today is because a group of Aghoris once kidnapped a little boy, sacrificed him, and ate him. When his distraught mother came to them to ask about her son, they lied to her and said they had not seen him. Then she complained to Guru Dattatreya, the first of all Aghoris in the world, who used his yogic power to discover what had happened. He became wild and personally expelled all but the best Aghoris from Girnar. So what they say about Aghoris and human sacrifice is true. Earlier in his life, Vimalananda had lived as a naked sadhu at Mount Girnar, a renowned pilgrimage spot in western India, where he met his senior Guru Maharaj. Aghoris have always been fond of Narabali, but no true Aghori kills without being able to resurrect. There is one very hard group of Aghoris, which uses Narabali if they enter a village and the villagers fail to welcome them properly. These Aghoris perform Homa, fire worship, and invoke a goddess like Chandi, goddess of cholera, and Shitala, goddess of smallpox and chickenpox, to ravage the village. While it might seem that this could not help anyone, these deaths in fact act as Narabalis, which makes Ma pleased with the Aghoris. The victims are benefited because Ma has taken them, and they are bound to be saved. And the remaining villagers, who come to their senses after a few deaths, learn proper manners. Everyone gets some benefit, but the process does produce some karma. Doesn't it produce a lot of karma? It certainly seems like a lot of ego is involved here. Like there was with the Aghoris that Dattatreya threw out of Girnar. I mean, alright, the villagers failed to welcome you properly. But is that a good reason to kill them? Shouldn't you be a little more compassionate if you were a sadhu? Suppose, though, that you are an Aghori whose worship of Chandi or Shitala has matured, and your goddess is with you 24 hours a day. Then the villagers are not offending you as much as they are offending your goddess. It is she who loses her temper, she who performs the homa through you, and she who consumes the sacrifices. And besides, if a tiger were to waltz in here right now, you would behave toward it with respect, wouldn't you? I should hope so. Similarly, you would be very wise to behave respectfully towards a powerful goddess, in whatever form she might choose to appear to you. It is true that the villagers probably did not ask for the yogis to come to their village, but once they arrived, the locals ought to have realized the potential consequences for disregarding them. This is India, after all. There is no lack of precedent for this kind of thing. Remember, don't ever make friends with a king, a yogi, the fire, or the water unless you plan to live up to your friendship. He started to laugh. My senior guru Maharaj, my Bapu, is both a ruler and a yogi, so you have to be extra careful with him. One day he took me to a place where an immense underground treasure lay buried. We passed through stacks and stacks of gold bricks, heaps of jewels and what have you, but neither of us stopped for them. We were both interested in an amulet, one small amulet. In order to obtain it, though, a small child would have to be sacrificed. Bapu ordered me to do it, but I refused. Why stain my hands? All right, he said. I'll make you a deal. I will come to you in any form. Watch out for me and catch me. And if you catch me, I will see that you get the amulet. Great. Back in Bombay a few days later, I was just sending my son Ranu up to bed when suddenly an enormous black cobra appeared. I was on one part of this divided staircase and my friend Dinkar was on the other, with Ranu. The cobra wound itself around Ranu's leg. My senior guru Maharaj always did love that boy. Ranu didn't do anything, as if he understood. Then the cobra headed toward me. Unfortunately, by this time, Dinkar, the stupid idiot, had started shouting, "Snake! Snake! Snake!" He grabbed the walking stick and began to beat the cobra before I could stop him. The snake disappeared forthwith, and I became furious. I told you not to hit that snake! Now, the proper thing to do here, if you have a stick and there's like a deadly cobra, you throw down the stick and make it become a bigger cobra that eats the smaller cobra. I told you not to hit that snake! He cut me off. Now, Pratap, you don't know. Those snakes are deadly poisonous. Ranu was here. He might have been bitten. But, numbskull, if the snake was going to bite Ranu, he would have done so while he was curled around the boy's leg. What can you do with such people? A few days later, I met my senior guru Maharaj again. He was wild with rage. Look at what you've done! Most of my bones have been battered. My bones are battered, dude. I got bonitis now. Showing me the place in his back where he had been clubbed. What can I do, Maharaj? I asked him. I couldn't stop him in time. And until today, neither of us has obtained that amulet. We both smiled and moved on to other things. The next morning, Vimalananda returned to the subject of a sacrifice in what seemed to be an incongruous venue, the RWITC Cafe at the racecourse, where we sat over buttered toast and milky tea after witnessing the early morning track work. Vimalananda's then trainer, Mr. Lafange, sat with us for a while, trying to convince us that the mediocre work we had witnessed was something more than mediocre. After he left, Vimalananda grimaced briefly as the euphony of the chirruping of the chirruping birds was contaminated by the stridor of two of the stuffier club members. They were hypnotizing over foreign jockeys, who George McGrath would be riding for this year, and whether Sir Lester Piggott, then the Queen of England's retained rider, would be out for the Derby again. Bunch of bullcrap. Reptiles. Reptilian humanoids. Vimalananda spoke. I have always believed in avoiding karma whenever possible. The more you do try to accomplish your ends, the more karma you create for yourself. Whether in human sacrifice or in horse racing, avoiding karma is the sensible way to go. One way to avoid karma in human sacrifice is to follow the example of the rishis and use a mantra to bring the man back to life after sacrificing him. But even without such a mantra, you can still offer as many human sacrifices as you like without ever becoming stained by karma, if your intelligence is subtle enough. Can you guess how? It must have something to do with the victim's prana. Right! Ma has no use at all for the bodies of sacrificial victims. She is ethereal. She has use only for the spirit which is separated from the body at death, and the prana which that spirit carries. Knowing this, a clever person can offer a human sacrifice without any danger by taking a spirit and offering it to Ma. You can take any spirit, even one killed on a battlefield. Wars kill so many every year. You can give thousands of Narabalis this way if you so desire. All you have to do is know how to do it. That's it, just know. Just already know, it's easy. Just be born with innate knowledge already. God, I wish that was me. Avocado asked, you want videos of people doing weird things by Siddhana? Like, absolutely, dude. Yeah, I'm thinking it's Narabali time, most definitely, Kay. I'm thinking it's time! It's time! It's Narabali time! Yeah, make sure, Avocado, you send me those videos. It's very hard to find these videos. Kay has sent me a few videos of weird sadhanas and miracles or whatever. Yeah, YouTube does suck, and it is, like, impossible to find. Some of my favorites that I found recently were sadhus, like, walking naked in, like, the snowy mountains of the Himalayas. That's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, Narabalis, here we go. First, you locate a country in which a war is going on. Then you tell Ma, I'm going to provide you with a certain number of Narabalis within 2 days, if you give me permission to do so. If she gives you permission, you proceed, otherwise not. You collect all the spirits of everyone who has died in the war thus far, soldiers and civilians, innocent victims, guilty warmongers alike. Since they have all died violent deaths, they don't know where to go and cannot find their way into a new rebirth. After collecting the spirits, you bring them to the spot where you will invoke Ma to devour them. Then you perform Stambana, immobilizing, and Kilana, nailing, to lock them inside a circle from which they will be unable to escape. This is the ethereal equivalent of tethering a sacrificial animal to the sacrificial post by tying a noose around its neck. Then you invoke Ma. When Ma arrives, she is ready to eat, but because she is ethereal, she does not eat with her mouth. She inhales the spirits. They are ethereal anyway, just like puffs of wind, taking their prana from them and enjoying her own cosmic intoxication. Have you ever seen a puppy playing with a ball? You throw the ball, he runs after it, catches it, and runs back to you with the ball in his mouth so you can throw it again. It's the same thing here. Ma has caused all these beings to take birth, to be thrown into the samsara, the universe of manifested existence. You were just restoring them to her so she can throw them out again.
She doesn't toss them into some ditch, of course. Because of her grace, her aspect of motherhood, they all receive immediate higher rebirths. Ma is the mother of all, and what mother refuses to save her children, even when they are naughty. So the spirits are bound to be satisfied by this process. Ma is also satisfied, and she rewards the sacrificer. Everyone is happy, and the real beauty of the whole thing is that the karma is very minimal. Great. Why aren't more people doing this sort of thing? Because it is very difficult to do, unfortunately. This is why we have yet other ways of offering Narabali. One way requires that you find an animal or a human with whom you have the right Renano Bandhana. Then you invoke into that person or animal a goddess or a spirit of a certain class who also has the right Renano Bandhana with the prospective victim. The goddess or the spirit then sits inside that victim and drinks up all his blood. The victim gradually loses weight and wastes away to a skeleton because his prana is being lost. There is no cure. Death comes as soon as Ma wishes, or as soon as the spirit has taken all the blood it is entitled to in that case. For instance, you might select Chinnamasta, the great goddess who holds her severed head in her hand and drinks an unceasing stream of her own blood. She is the goddess of wasting diseases like leukemia, in which the red blood cells decrease and the white blood cells increase. Sometimes ordinary leukemia patients survive because Ma chooses only to take part of their prana when she calls on them. But no victim of a Narabali can survive unless you botch the ritual. Whatever goddess you may select will be happy because she will get the spirit of the being she wanted without having to bother about all the flesh and other disagreeable offal produced in a physical sacrifice. The victims are made to remember God by their pain, which is nothing but the effects of all the karmas of their millions of previous births. When they die, Ma saves them. You get the benefit of giving the souls to Ma while you sit on the sidelines as a spectator. And none of the karma in actually killing the person comes to you. In these ways, 100,000 Narabalis can be given. The result? Tremendous! You could never do so many physical sacrifices, which is why I always say that the physical worship is limited. But if you try to fool about in this way without knowing your Renano Bandhana with your victims, you are heading for big, big trouble. So how to know Renano Bandhana? All in due time, my boy, laughed Vimalananda, all in due time. Next chapter will be Chapter 3, Teasers and Stallions. So I will conclude it there, and one more time I will say, if I were receiving $20 for each of these readings I did, I promise you I would do them almost every day unless I was dying. I would do them every day unless I'm physically incapable of doing it. I would do it. All I want is $20 from each of these. While I'm streaming, while I'm not streaming, I don't care. Donation links above me, below me. Feel free, homies. Feel free. I'm a poor man. I really am. Talking about how Bigfoots be in the chat, Avocado. If you know about them Bigfoots, them Yetis, you tell me. I've heard that the Yetis were a group of people who went away from society and evolved into animals. Heard many things about Yetis. War in Ukraine, man. That Narabali zone. Kay says that's true. That's true. Or you could just give a lemon to Ma, or a coconut will work apparently. That's probably true as well. So thank you all. Whoop whoop. God bless every one of you, and I do love you all. I do. See you next time. Oh, me and Kay are going to do a remote viewing thing soon, so I'm going to follow up. If you haven't seen the remote viewing thing on my channel, watch it. It was super good, dude. We're going to do another. There will be more soon, more gory, more AGHORA, more everything, more fucking tobacco being smoked.